Okay, so today we're going to do a biography research and presentation lesson. This is for 4th grade. And the standards are 1.2, participate in curriculum design and integrated planning of shared school campus vision that focuses on reading, teaching, and learning. So we're focusing on doing a biography on some people that have made a contribution or impact in history. And then the campus-wide aspect of that is that once we are finished with our research and we have finalized our drafts, we're going to present those to the entire school during morning meeting. The next standard is provide instructional access to library resources through open, flexible scheduling for classes, small groups, and individuals. So raise your hand if you've seen me in the libraries in the morning and after school and stuff like that. Yeah. So I've been going in there to kind of make the library available during non-regular hours. So a little bit earlier. Sometimes I'm in there even during my lunch and on my conference time. If there's not already classes going on, then you guys, that makes the library available for you guys to come visit. Okay. All right. So this is going to be a biography lesson. So what is a biography? Can anybody share with me what you already know about a biography? And I'm going to give you a definition in a second, but I just want to hear in your own words, what do you know about a biography? Yes, ma'am.
So a biography is like when someone is like writing a very famous person, like in a book.
Okay.
That kind of stuff.
Okay, so it's written about a famous person. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Biography is a story where somebody else writes about a famous person.
Okay, so it's written by someone else. And how do they get that information, do you think?
By researching.
Okay, maybe by researching. How else? Yes, sir.
Maybe if they met the person.
Maybe if they met the person, right? Could you do it? That would be using a source as an interview. We talked about that before in a previous lesson, didn't we? So you could actually interview that person. Now, if it's way back in history and they're not alive anymore, obviously you can't interview that exact person, but maybe you could interview a family member or someone that really knew a lot about them. Yes, ma'am?
You could also read a book about them.
You sure could. You sure could. You could find books in our library. Do you guys know where the biography section is in the library?
Yes.
Very good. And we're going to go visit that in a little bit so I can make sure I point that out to you when you guys can find your books, okay? Yes, ma'am.
You can also search on online websites.
Yes, absolutely. Like, can you think of a website that you might search for that?
You could use Kindle.
Okay, that's a good one.
And they have images and pictures, and sometimes under there they have like kind of like a short article, and it just talks about what happens.
Yeah, perfect. That would be great. So yes, we want to do online research as well because there's a lot of good information on there. You can also get images, like she said, pictures. Sometimes it helps me to really understand the person better if I can see a picture of them, right? It helps you kind of feel like you're getting to know them a little bit better. Yes, ma'am.
Another one of those researches is Webdiga, or I don't know how to say it, but Webdiga.
Okay.
And yeah, that's another website you can go on.
Okay, very good. So they also have things on Discovery. There's PBS that has a section on biographies of some people. You could also search like Encyclopedia Britannica has a great resource. When I was younger, we always had the big encyclopedia books, and you would go get the letter of the person's name that you wanted to go look at or whatever it was you were researching. But now you guys have the whole thing, all that information at your fingertips just on their website. Okay? All right, last thing.
You can also search online for videos, and videos can talk about it and show you more images.
They sure could. Yeah, that's a great idea. Videos are another good resource. Yes, ma'am.
Like if you're searching up about animals, you can go on National Geographic, and my mom loves to watch it. And it gives you a lot of information about them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and you said about animals, but also National Geographic also has information about people, so that is another very good resource. Thank you for pointing that one out. Okay, so we know we've talked a lot about what a biography is, but also at the end of this lesson, you're going to do what we call an autobiography. And I'm really excited about this part of the activity because I think it's going to be really fun for you to interview maybe your parents about your early years, things that you may not remember about yourself. So what is an autobiography? What does that mean, Cameron?
It's like a biography that you make yourself
It's like a biography that you make. Say that again.
about yourself.
About yourself. That's right. Good job. Okay. Did anybody else have something they wanted to add? Did you have your hand up? You changed your mind? Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
It's kind of like what Cameron said. Like they made it about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and like they may be telling like stuff that is different than the biography.
Okay. Because it's actually about yourself, right? And you should know how you're thinking and how you're feeling, so you could maybe even express that more, right? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
When I did UIL for Ready Writing, there was this one, and it was an autobiography, and I didn't remember much because I was younger. So I just asked my mom like different questions on what I liked when I was younger. For instance, my first birthday party was a Winnie and Pooh birthday party. I really liked it. So when I always think of autobiography, I think of that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So you've written one before. You have experience with it, and you interviewed your mom. That's awesome. Okay, one last thing, and then we got to move on.
Sometimes whenever people see like autobiographies and biographies,
Mm-hmm.
then they always look like they're like really long, and so sometimes people don't like want to like read it because they look like a very big chapter book.
So sometimes it's kind of intimidating because it's a really big book. Yeah. Okay. All right. So most of the ones we have in our library are pretty small. This is an example of one that I'm going to read to y'all in just a second. So it's pretty small, and the print is big, you know. But depending on who you're researching, there definitely might be a lot more. And there's a lot of different books about Harriet Tubman in there. This was just one that I chose. So isn't it a good idea to read more than one so that you can look at the information and compare it, right? What did we call that? Do you remember what we called that? And I did this. What is that called? When you're basically fact checking one book against another or a website against a book. Do you remember what that was called?
Text to text.
Close. Cross-referencing?
Text to.
Yeah, cross-referencing. Okay, all right, so let's move on. So we know about a biography. We know about an autobiography. Here is an exact definition. A biography is a piece of writing that tells true facts and information about someone's life in a respectful way. Okay, so that's the definition I have for a biography. It can be about a famous person or someone you know in real life. You could write a biography about a family member or a trusted friend that you wanted to write about. It says, listen and learn about Harriet Tubman. So we're going to read this little book about Harriet Tubman. And together, we're going to fill out a graphic organizer so that I can show you guys what you're going to be doing when you research your person. Okay? All right, so everybody listen. While I'm reading, I want you to be thinking about some interesting facts that you think we might want to add to our graphic organizer or our story when we write it, okay? So if you hear something interesting that you're like, ooh, that seems important, you can go ahead and write that down as I'm reading, okay? All right, so Harriet Tubman, this is written by Randy T. Gosta, and this is a book that is part of a series, and so there's lots of different biographies in our library in this series. So on the back, it tells us there's a book about Daniel Boone, Sitting Bull, Benjamin Franklin, Pocahontas, and Booker T. Washington. So there's a whole series of these. All right, so here's an a picture of Harriet Tubman. I believe it's the same one as the one on the cover. Right, and there's a table of contents. So if you're doing your research and you're like, oh, what did that say about maybe her childhood? You could come to the table of contents if you have one of these books, and you can find that information really quickly. All right, so here we go. Who is Harriet Tubman? Before 1865, many African Americans lived as slaves in the South. These slaves had no rights and no freedom. Harriet Tubman believed everyone had the right to be free. She led over 300 slaves to freedom on the Underground Railroad. This brave woman is famous for fighting slavery. Now, in my research, I noticed that there was actually conflicting information about that. So some people believe that she saved over 300 people from slavery. And in one book, it said that she was actually quoted to saying that she did 13 missions and saved about 70 people. And so since this is a really long time ago, we really don't know, right, exactly. And it could be that she saved more than she realized, right? Okay, so Harriet Tubman's real name was Araminta Ross, but nobody called her that. As a little girl, she was Minty. As a young woman, she was Harriet. Harriet was also her mother's name. Harriet Tubman was born around 1820 in Maryland. Why do you think it says about or around 1820 and it doesn't have her? Raise your hand if you know your exact birth date. Yep. So why don't we know Harriet Tubman's exact birth date? What do you think? Marcella.
I think that since we don't know about her birthday,
Okay, very good. Is there any other reason why you might think we don't know her exact birth date? Yes, ma'am.
so I know why they probably thought of around a different time and they didn't know exactly when the birthday was because since that information was such a long time ago, they can't go back and find that. So they would also have to find clues to help them, like if she lived in a certain house that was built in a certain time, then
Okay.
they could try to figure
Yeah, that would be a good way to try to figure that out. Do you guys think she was born in a hospital like you were?
No.
Probably not, right? And so the documentation probably wasn't very good, right? She was probably born at home, right? So they don't know her exact birthday. Okay, Harriet had, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. Maryland was a slave state. Harriet and her family were slaves. Edward Brodess owned Harriet and her family. They worked on Mr. Brodess's plantation, and a plantation is a large farm. Harriet had 10 brothers and sisters. Harriet's big family lived in a small cabin like this one. It was only one room and had no windows. Harriet and her family slept on a dirt floor. Growing up, one day Mr. Brodess sent Harriet away. She started working for the Cook family. Harriet helped Mrs. Cook make cloth. She helped Mr. Cook trap muskrats. This was hard work for, you ready for her age? 7 years old. Harriet missed her family. The Cooks did not give her much to eat, and Harriet got very sick. So the Cooks sent her back to Mr. Brodess. Slave life was very hard. Harriet cleaned houses. She picked cotton. Someone punished Harriet when she made a mistake. She was only 7 years old. Harriet could not go to school. Harriet hated being a slave, but she could not quit working for Mr. Brodess. One day, Harriet saw a slave run away. The overseer chased the runaway slave, and Harriet followed. The runaway slave gave Harriet an idea. Harriet thought about running away from Mr. Brodess's plantation. She heard people talk about the Underground Railroad. This was not a real railroad with a train. The Underground Railroad was made up of people. These people knew slavery was wrong. They wanted to help. The Underground Railroad secretly helped slaves run away to freedom. Harriet later married John Tubman in 1844. I see some of you writing. That's an important piece of information, isn't it? Harriet married John Tubman in 1844. John Tubman used to be a slave, but his owner set him free. Harriet wanted to be free like John. She talked to John about running away, but John thought running away was a bad idea. It could have been very dangerous for her. It was a very sad time. The Way to Freedom is the title of the next chapter. In 1849, Harriet Tubman secretly ran away. She did not tell her family or John Tubman. Harriet went to a woman on the Underground Railroad. She told Harriet how to find the next station. A station was a safe hiding place for runaway slaves. Here's a picture. I know you can't see it very well, but I'll have the book to the side if you guys want to check it out later. Harriet's trip to the north was not easy. Slave hunters were looking for her. She hid during the day. She walked through the woods at night. Freedom was 90 miles away. That's a long way to walk, isn't it? Finally, Harriet made it to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was a free state in the north, and Harriet was free. Here's a picture of some slaves. They often walked through water so that they couldn't be tracked as easily. Okay, this chapter is called Another Escape. Harriet lived in Philadelphia. She enjoyed her freedom. She was free to work for herself. She was free to keep the money she earned, but she missed her family. So things were better there, but she missed her family. In Philadelphia, Harriet met the Vigilance Committee. The Vigilance Committee was made up of abolitionists. Abolitionists believed that slavery was wrong. The Vigilance Committee helped Harriet. Together they made plans to set Harriet's family free. In 1850, Harriet went back to Maryland for her family. The South was full of danger for Harriet. Harriet would be sent back to Mr. Brodess if someone found her. Mr. Brodess would punish her, but Harriet was smart and careful. She dressed up like an old man. She covered the scar on her head. Harriet safely led her family out of the South. I also read in another story that she carried around, she would wear like a big trench coat so she looked like a man, and she would carry a chicken with her. Harriet made 18 more trips on the Underground Railroad. Harriet spent 10 years saving these African Americans from slavery. Every person she brought to the North arrived safely. Nobody ever caught Harriet Tubman. John Andrew was a governor or leader of Massachusetts. John Andrew believed that Harriet could help the North. The North was fighting the South in the Civil War. John Andrew asked Harriet for her help, and she said yes. Harriet nursed hurt soldiers. She spied on armies. She scouted land. People called her Harriet General Tubman. Harriet helped the North win the Civil War. Slavery in the United States ended in 1865. Everyone was free. After the war, Harriet settled in Auburn, New York. She earned money from helping the North, but the United States was slow to pay her. Being poor did not stop Harriet from helping people. She opened her house to poor and sick people. Harriet never turned anyone away. What do you guys think about Harriet so far? Can y'all think of some qualities that she has that are very impressive? What are some things that you could say about Harriet Tubman? Yes, ma'am.
She has a lot of courage to help people because just to help people, she's sacrificing her life because she could have gotten caught and killed many times, but she didn't, and she helped people.
And that takes a lot of courage, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so she's definitely courageous. Is she smart?
Yes.
Yep, she's smart. What else? Yes, ma'am.
She's very kind because she has to sick people and never turned anyone down.
Yeah, she seems very kind, doesn't she? Yes.
So she's helpful, and she also
worried about like other people, not just herself?
Yes, that's a good point, right? So she worried about other people, even though she was in a very bad situation herself, right? I can't imagine trying to do that kind of work at such a young age and being treated that way. It was very sad.
Wait, she had to worry.
And so she, at only 7,
Yeah.
is when it talked about that she actually got moved away from her family to go work somewhere else. So she was very kind. It didn't sound like she gave up very easily at all, did she? So she persevered. She was courageous. Yes, ma'am.
She had to wear a trench coat when she was 7.
No, I think that was later on.
Oh.
Yeah, that was later on. Like after she had gotten her freedom and she came back, she would disguise herself. Okay, so being poor did not stop Harriet from helping people. She opened her house to poor and sick people, and she never turned anyone away. I think I had just read that part. Many African Americans had problems after the Civil War. Many did not know how to read or write. Harriet helped them. She raised money to open special schools. Remember earlier in the story that I said that a lot of people did not get to go to school, right? They were working, and so they weren't allowed to go to school. And so she worked really hard to help her fellow people become educated and learning to read and write. There's not a whole lot in this world you can do without being able to read and write.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
When did she, when did the, slavery stop?
When did it stop?
Yeah.
I'll go back to it and tell you. It said, that's an important date that we're going to want to know. It said slavery in the United States ended in 1865. 1865. All right. So here's a picture of Harriet in a school that she opened. I'm going to come around and show you guys the picture.
What ended in what?
1865.
1865. It's just one little schoolhouse for all of the kids to go to school. Just sometimes you guys forget how lucky you are to get to come to school.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do, don't we? We forget about those things.
Because some kids don't get to go to school like that.
The kids in front of the schoolhouse. Can you see it? Oh, yeah, you're taking lots of notes. All right, there you go. Did you see it? Okay. In 1870, women did not have the right to vote. Harriet thought this was unfair to women, so she joined the suffrage movement. So suffrage movement was before women were allowed to vote. Raise your hand if you have been with your parents maybe to vote when they've gone to vote for president or a local election or something like that. And usually they give you a little sticker and it says, I voted. Yeah. So there was a time when the slaves were not allowed to vote and women were not allowed to vote. And so this lady here created a campaign for, and it was called the suffrage movement, for women to be able to have the right to vote. So Harriet Tubman joined with her in that. Yes.
I know on Netflix they have a show and it's about history and the actors that are in there, they act as different people. And there was one that had Susan B. Anthony in there.
Uh-huh.
And
Hey, good for you. I hadn't even said her name yet.
yeah, I noticed that.
Uh-huh.
And in there, when she was young, she wanted to go to like nowadays for public schools, like there's boys and girls and everything like that.
Yes.
But when she was a kid, they forced her to just go to schools with girls.
Yes.
So
So they
she-
had all
she-
boys schools
yeah.
and all girls
So
schools.
she got really, really mad about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Our school today looks very different than schools way back then, right?
Yeah, it's like colorful and
Yeah.
bright.
Yes. Uh-huh.
like when we were doing our paper for reading, we were it was about this one school. They didn't let her do softball like with boys, like they took down the only girl softball and they made it boys and girls. She didn't like it with boys and girls because most of the boys were better than her, and it was only her in softball. So it was like this really good story. I think maybe we did in Miss Ragsdale's class, and in the like she sued the school for not letting her do that. And
That was in Miss Dean's class. We
Yeah.
did that.
Do you remember that story?
Yeah,
it
there's
was
an
softball,
article.
it was either football or soccer.
It was baseball.
Oh, okay. So it was a sport.
yeah, baseball was.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this says the suffragists fought for the women's right to vote, and as she already pointed out, this is Susan B. Anthony, and she was the leader of the suffrage movement. Okay, so the next chapter is called Harriet the Brave. We said she had courage, but we didn't use that word earlier. But
She was brave.
yeah, she is brave. Okay, people around the world learned about Harriet Tubman's bravery. Sarah Bradford wrote 2 books about Harriet's life. The Queen of England gave Harriet a Diamond Jubilee Medal. Harriet Tubman lived to be 93 years old. Many people today celebrate Harriet's fight against slavery.
Wait, what was Harriet Tubman's like?
Okay, so there's a section in the back. Actually, I really like this, and I'm hoping that some of the books that you guys find for your biography will have this section as well. So there's a little part right here that says important dates and then important words. So what do you think important words would be like?
Harriet Tubman. Suffrage.
Okay, but the important words section, what do you think that would be like?
It tells you about the important stuff about her.
Like the pages.
facts.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Good job. Yes, so like a dictionary entry. So yeah, it is important words, maybe some that you may not recognize or understand. Okay, so there's a little glossary section that they call important words. And then down here, there's actually a couple of websites that you could visit to get more information. So I would encourage you to check those out as well. Okay, so the important dates. And if you wanted to make, like for your report, if you wanted to actually create like a timeline, you could draw that out, and this would be very helpful to do that. So it says 1820 to 1821, Harriet Tubman is born around this time. 1844, Harriet marries John Tubman. 1849, Harriet runs away from slavery. 1850, Harriet helps her family escape the South. She works on the Underground Railroad for about 10 years. And remember, the Underground Railroad is just secret paths, right? And along the way, they had people that would, basically, it was like rest stops where they would be safe, where they could rest and get food and things like that, replenish their supplies. Can you wait 1 second till I get through this? Okay. And then it says 1865, General Tubman, who is Harriet, helps the North win the Civil War and the U.S. ends slavery. In 1869, Sarah Hopkins Bradford writes scenes from the life of Harriet Tubman. And then in 1913, you're going to want to write this one down, Harriet Tubman dies at the age of 93.
Wait, 1931?
1913. She dies at the age of 93. Okay, and then one reason why I chose for us to learn about Harriet Tubman is because there's a special day for Harriet Tubman in March, and it's March 10th. It is, they began in 1990 celebrating the first Harriet Tubman Day. So March 10th, which is just a few days away, is Harriet Tubman Day. Okay?
Wait, Miss Fincher.
Yes, ma'am.
What year did she die?
1913. Okay, and then what did you want to share?
I was gonna say she would be 17. If she was in the.
Oh, are you talking about when she got married, or when?
And when you're talking about the railroads,
Oh, okay.
she would be 17 because if she was 7 and it took her 10 years, she would turn 17.
Okay, good job. All right, any questions about our book so far? Okay, so this is a biography, right? Harriet Tubman did not write this herself, okay? And I would imagine that the person who wrote it, do you think they got to interview her?
Yeah, maybe.
Probably not, right? Probably not. So how do you think they got the information for the book?
They probably got it from the internet or from those websites on the book.
Okay, what else?
Or like they heard other people say it.
Okay, so they heard, so from word of mouth, they may have checked different resources like the books. Summer pointed out that they probably actually used these websites that they have on the book, right? That they're saying that you could get more information from, so that's very possible as well. Okay, all right, and then in the back, there is an index where you could, if you're wanting to find out information about something specific or a person that they mentioned, you could go back and check. So pretty much any book that you have is going to have those features that would help you locate information in your biography. Especially like Izzy pointed out earlier, sometimes the books are pretty big and there's a lot of information in there and you might need help finding something specific. Okay? Okay, so let me show you guys now a little bit. These are some people, different famous people who you might want to research. Does anybody know who this is? Yes, ma'am? Who is it?
George Washington.
George Washington. Very good. This is Harriet Tubman. Yep.
That's Pele.
Anybody know that? Some of my soccer players? Emmanuel? Yes.
I think I've heard about him, or maybe it was somebody different.
Uh-huh.
But I think we were on a vacation, and it was about this guy who, like, either he was a really good runner and he ran really fast, or like something sort of in that nature.
Okay. All right. So you might be thinking of like Usain Bolt, I think is how you say his name. He was a runner. This gentleman is actually a Brazilian soccer player that's very well known. His name is Pele.
But in
Okay. Anybody know this one? Albert Einstein, the man with all the brilliant thoughts and the crazy hair. All right. Baseball player. I have the name already there for you. Yep. Say it again.
Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth.
I love him.
He even has a candy bar after him. Okay. What about this one? Martin Luther King Jr. Good.
Rosa Parks.
And Rosa Parks. So, those are just a few people that you could maybe research, but you're welcome to research whoever you're interested in, okay? All right, so we're going to learn how to use print and online sources to find out facts about a person, okay? And we've already talked about some of those ways that you could do that. And so you're going to visit the library, and there's that whole section. Most of you already raised your hand and said you knew where the biography section was, but I will definitely be in there to help you if you're having trouble finding someone or information about someone, and then we can use some additional online resources as well. Okay? So my question for you is, y'all want to read it with me? You ready?
Who would you like to know more about?
Yeah, who would you like to know more about? So who's someone that you might want to research? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what the name is, but she has something to do with like an airplane or something.
Okay, are you thinking of Amelia Earhart?
Yeah.
Yes, very cool. That's a good one. And I know that there's books in the library on her.
Back in California, I did this thing called Wax Museum.
Yes.
I want to research more about the person I did, who was Cleopatra.
Oh, okay, Cleopatra. Cool. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I want to learn more about Rosa Parks because I did like a thing in third grade about it.
Okay, Very good. So you want to learn more about Rosa Parks. That's awesome. Does anybody else have an idea already of who they might want to research?
Martin Luther King Jr.
Martin Luther King Jr. Anybody else? Yes, sir?
Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth. Good idea. All right. Awesome. Abraham Lincoln. All right. So this is information that you're going to want to find when you're doing getting ready to prepare and you're working on your graphic organizer. This is information that you're going to need. And I know I told you guys to kind of jot down some stuff that you thought was important as I read. And a lot of you did a really great job of that. And you were even asking me, what was that specific date again? Because dates are really important. Because remember, we want the information to be factual. What does factual mean? What does factual mean?
True.
The truth, right? We want it to be the truth. Okay, so some information you're going to want is the date of birth and their place of birth. And as we saw with Harriet Tubman, and you may find it with some of the other people that you researched, they may not have the exact date, but you should be able to find something approximate, okay? So maybe the month and the year. You're going to include the month, date, and year if you can find it, and then also the city and the state in which they were born, okay? Okay, then we have family members. Who are their family members? So what are their parents' names? Did they have brothers, sisters? Okay, are they married? So their spouse, a wife, or a husband. Do they have children? You're going to want to mention those people. Do you like my little family here?
Yes.
A very happy dog?
That's my dog.
Okay, so important childhood events and school life. It's really important that you think about what is that person's childhood like? What are some things that may have happened to them in their childhood that made them be someone of interest? Okay, so like if you're researching someone that is a famous sports figure, they probably had an interest in sports at an early age, or maybe they struggled in sports. So those are things that you could point out in your biography. So it says list 3 events from their childhood and their school life. Okay, contributions, interests, and activities. So you want to have at least 3 really good points. It says the person's important contributions. So why are they important? Why do you know that person's name this many years down the road, right? That person had to have done something that made them famous, that made people want to write a biography about them, right? And so what are those contributions? And how is that helping our world today? Or what impact did they have? So that's going to be really important that you hone in on that information. Yes, ma'am.
I know when different ways you can hear about certain people. It's like if they have a holiday about them, or if your family talks about them a lot, like maybe somehow their ancestors or anything, or just different stories you might hear.
Yeah, very good. That's a good point. And so if you're not really sure, you could also just, when we go to the library, just look in that section and kind of flip through the books and say, you know, what's something that I might be interested in. If it's something you're interested in, you could probably find something that's famous for doing that same thing, right? So that could also make it more fun and more interesting for you to research. So it says the points can come from only one area or a combination of areas. For an example with Harriet Tubman, right? So she was a civil rights activist. She was a nurse. She helped raise money for to open schools, things like that. So she did a lot of different things, right? They also mentioned that she was a spy or a general. Okay, so later in life. So what did that person do later in life? See if you can find 3 events about that person. And character traits. We talked a little bit about this already. I asked you guys, what are some ways that you could describe Harriet Tubman as I was reading the book, right? And so you guys already identified some important character traits that she had. What were some of the things we said? Courage, bravery, kindness,
She
helpful, okay,
Thoughtful.
thoughtful.
selfless.
I heard selfless. Ooh, I like that one, selfless. Okay, so it says identify 3 important character traits for your person, and you're going to give an example about your person for each trait. Okay, so here's an example. Harriet Tubman was courageous because she helped slaves into freedom. And as someone mentioned earlier, she did that putting herself in danger, didn't she? And so that brings in the selfless part of that, and it's also courageous. Okay, and the last thing you want to have is the date of death and place of death. And so we usually have pretty accurate information about that. But again, if for some reason your person, they don't have the exact date maybe or the exact place, just research and find what you can that you could use, okay? So some people, if it's a more modern day person, then you're going to have that information. Depending on who you're researching, you may have a hard time finding some of it, okay? All right, any questions so far? Okay. All right, so we're going to work on filling out our graphic organizer. And then I also have this little video that we're going to watch. So I'm going to show you the graphic organizer real quick. And we're just going to start filling it out. And you're probably going to help me with some of the information that you've already jotted down. Let me see. A little bigger. Okay, so let's just start off at the top here. And on this paper, you're also going to see that there's another website that you can use to get some more research. Okay, so for name, what are we going to put here? Harriet Tubman. Okay, and then who has her birth date? What are we going to put for her birth date?
1820 to 1821.
Okay, did it say March 1820?
No. March
No.
10th. Make sure you don't mark the book.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Let me look because I want to make sure I get the information right. Okay, so it says she was born around 1820. Oh, I know where I got March from, was from her date of her special day. Okay, so her birthday is there. Her hometown was Maryland. When she escaped slavery, where did she go?
Philadelphia.
Okay. Ran out of room a little bit there. Okay, and then her death date. Do you have that? Yes, sir.
Yes, 1913.
And I remember it said her age. What was her age?
93.
Very good. Thank you, guys. Okay, so she passed away in 1913 at age 93. Okay, I'm going to go back and find her parents' names. She
lived for a lot.
You know what? For as much traumatic stuff she had in her life, she lived a very long life.
Yeah.
Okay, so her mother's name was Harriet also.
Harriet and I forgot the dad's name.
Harriet Ross. And this book actually does not seem to have her father's name. She did have a father. I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember right off my head. So you know what? What does that mean I'm going to have to do?
Research.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check another book, right? I'm going to have to research some other place so that I can get her dad's name. And I know I read it in one of the other books, but for some reason, oddly, it's not actually in this one. Okay. All right. And then at the bottom of our form here, our graphic organizer, we have 3 interesting facts. I'm going to slide my paper up so we can write our 3 interesting facts.
She was, you might have to research them. Or
Did anybody write something down that we could write as an interesting fact? Yes, ma'am.
She was a nurse and in general.
She was a nurse. She worked as a spy. And let's make sure, we always want to check back to our book to make sure that we're writing it down right. General Tubman. And this is just going to be notes because after you write your graphic organizer out, then you're going to go back and make these into complete sentences, right? Okay. Spy for the Union. Okay, what else? Yes, ma'am.
Another reason is that she had a nickname as a kid, which is Minty, and then when she was adult, she was named Harriet.
Okay, so I'm going to put that with her name. So her nickname was Minty. That's cute, isn't it? And then later she went by Harriet. Okay, so she also led, we don't know for sure, either 70 or 300 people to freedom. What was that called? The what?
Underground Railroad.
Yeah, very good. The Underground Railroad. Okay. Anything else somebody want to add? Yes, ma'am.
That she had 10 brothers, and I can't remember.
It was 8.
Okay, I'm going to put that with her family. So this is parents. I'm going to put family. And she had 10 brothers and sisters. Good job. Okay. Did we hear anything about something important that was maybe given to her or written about her? Do we remember something about that, Leo? Someone very specific was mentioned in the book that they gave her some sort of medal. Do you remember that part? Okay, what was it?
What's her name?
Queen of England, that's right.
Queen of England,
Okay.
diamond.
All right, so I'm going to check back to our book because we want to make sure we get it right. It was called something specific, so we want to make sure we write that down. I thought I knew right where it was. The Diamond Jubilee Medal. Diamond Jubilee Medal. Okay.
Can you push up for us?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Thank
so I wanted you guys to do one of those with me so that you are more comfortable and you have an idea of what you're going to do with your persons. So you're going to get some interesting facts. The back side of this is blank. So anything else that you want to add on there, you're welcome to do. Because you may want to just have a few more notes about her childhood. There's some other things that you might want to talk about. And notice that I added some stuff that kind of went with the other areas. So you're welcome to do that. This is your graphic organizer, okay? So it's kind of just like an outline or a little bit of a plan. It's to give you a guide so that you know what you're working towards, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this off the screen for a minute because I have a little video that I want to share with you that you're actually going to watch again after you do your research. You're going to do your graphic organizer, and then you're going to watch this little video. It gives you some just little tips on writing a biography about someone, okay? And so I'm going to play it for you today, but then before you write your biography, you can play it again. I'll put it on your Google Classroom or something. And then after that, an extension of this activity, and this is the really fun part I think that you're going to like, is you're going to write an autobiography about yourself. So you're going to interview maybe your family, your parents, and then you're going to write a story about you. So you'll be writing an autobiography, okay? All right, let me go ahead and get rid of this so I can pull the slideshow back up, and we're going to watch this video. Okay, so I think I've already explained all this to you. This is the video. We're going to rewatch this after you complete your research and your graphic organizer. And then I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to present these school-wide afterwards. And then there's going to be an extension activity of writing an autobiography. Okay? All right, so let's just watch this to give you a little bit of a preview of what you're going to be doing. It's some helpful tips.
Hi students, now we're going to take your research and we're going to turn it into a biography. A good biography includes a little about their early life, focuses mostly on important contributions, and ends with what they'll be remembered for. Start by organizing your research into early life, important events, and what they'll be remembered for. In your introduction, tell us who your biography is about, when and where they were born, and any interesting facts about their childhood, school years, or young adulthood. Tell us if they had any training, schooling, or life experiences that helped shape who they would become in later life. In the body of your biography, or the main part, write paragraphs that address the important contributions your subject made to society. Be sure to answer your research questions in complete sentences. Don't forget your in-text citation. In your conclusion, tell us when and where the subject died, or if they are still alive. Tell us the most important things for which they will be remembered. It is really important to cite the sources you used in your research. Be sure to include a works cited page or a bibliography to tell your readers where you got the information included in your biography.
Okay, so this part is really important, and this is one reason why I wanted to watch the video first, because I wanted to remind you that when you're getting your information, so before I return this book to the library, I'm going to make sure I write all of this down because I need to know where I got certain information from, right? And so just like in the back of this book, they put some different websites with information. So if you go to a website, okay, you're going to need to write that information down so that later on when you're writing your report that you can add that information so that people can go back and research more, and also they know that you did your research and you got information from somewhere, right? This information that I told you and that we wrote down on our graphic organizer, I didn't just make that up in my head, right? This is someone else's research and someone else's words. So I need to make sure that I acknowledge them since I'm borrowing their work, okay? So that's what they're talking about here is your works cited or your bibliography page. So all you have to do at this point, and I'll help you do that later, all you have to do at this point is as you're doing your research, any book or website that you use, you need to write the information down so that we can do your cited sources later. Okay? All right, awesome. I think that was the end of the video, but I'll make sure. Almost.
I think, yeah,
Just a happy son.
that is it.